In this third video, we're going to run through the Windows Server requirements. The Windows servers are required to install Horizon View and the various different roles, and therefore depending on your environment and the size and scale of it, you may need several servers. For example, you're going to need at least one connection server, another for a replica server, and then so on depending on your configuration. So what are we going to install for the example lab environment? So first off, we're going to need a server running Active Directory, which in the lab will also act as our file server. We'll then need a server for the connection server role, replica server role, security server role, and then a SQL server, which will be used for the view events database. So let's take a look at the virtual hardware requirements for these servers, and we'll start with the connection server. So the connection server in our example lab will be running Server 2016 as a virtual machine. We can use Standard or Enterprise Edition. And in the example lab, this server has been given the name HZN7-CS1. It's domain joined, and when it comes to hardware, we have 4 virtual CPUs, 10 gig of memory, 60 gig hard drive, and a minimum of a 1 gig network card with a static IP address. For now, we're just going to build these virtual machines up to the operating system level. Horizon will actually be installed when we get to Section 4 of this course. Next, we have the replica server. As this is another role of the connection server, then the virtual hardware requirements are going to be exactly the same. The obvious difference here is the server name. In this case it's called HZN7-CS2. So again, just build the operating system and we'll install View later on. Next, we have the security server, and again, as with the replica server, the security server is another connection server role, and therefore has the same requirements when it comes to the virtual machine hardware. In this instance, we've called this machine HZN7-SEC, but it is not domain joined. As a security server sitting in the DMZ, we do not join this server to the domain, and we'll talk about that later on as to why that is. Next up, we have our Active Directory server. This is required for our user accounts, but specifically some of the service accounts for managing the Horizon environment. In the example lab, this server is also used as our file server. If you already have an AD server in your test and dev environment, then feel free to use that. All we need to do is add some user accounts and some OUs. There's no schema changes or anything major to worry about. Finally, we'll need a SQL server. In the example lab, this is used for our view events database, but you would also need a database if you choose to run Linux clones, as View Composer will also need its own database. In the next video, we're going to look at some of those Active Directory requirements that are needed in place to run Horizon View.